Okay, so why don't we now switch over from capital theory to political philosophy and science fiction space operas, namely an analysis of Star Wars. So do you have a copy of that you want to hold up?
Yep. Here it is.
Okay, so it's The Rise and Fall of the First Galactic Empire, Star Wars and Political Philosophy. And what is that illustration? Because that doesn't look like Palpatine. What is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the cover from Thomas Hobbes' book,
Yep.
The Leviathan, slightly adjusted because you have a planet and the space, to suggest that it's mostly about the statist power.
Right, great. Okay, so let me mention at the outset, and by the way, folks, of course, you go to bobmurphyshow.com/125. I'll have links to all this stuff. Let me mention that even though it sounds like a fun topic and some people might think it's like frivolous, this was really good. I mean, obviously, I like your capital theory book, but that's to be expected. But this one, it was surprisingly good, and I hope you take that as a compliment. I mean, I'm saying I was reading it and I was like, whoa, this isn't just goofy. Like, oh, it's people. Everyone has a dark side to them, and you got to be careful and not succumb to it. And no, I mean, this is some serious analysis that for people who like Star Wars and like political philosophy, this is good stuff. So I like that.
Yeah. So, well, actually, to just interrupt you a little bit in here. Well, I wrote this book because there is a student circle at my university, and they asked me to give a lecture about Star Wars and political philosophy, something like this. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I started to think about it, and I reached out to find some books about this. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, I realized that virtually most of the stuff that is available in the market doesn't really go into those details. Right. And then there is a market niche there. I mean, this is just, there is an opportunity, Kirchner, an opportunity on the street to talk about things, because what has been published was mostly about, philosophy, theology, and psychology. When you look at those Star Wars something books, right? You could not find like this type of approach. Okay, sorry.
Well, no, I'm glad you did it because it surprised me, because I remember like for LouRockwell.com, I was writing reviews of the prequels when they were coming out. And to me, they obviously like the stuff corresponding to like the American Civil War and things like that. And it was obvious. And yet you're right that apparently there isn't, people hadn't done that, but now you've done it. So here, your dedication of this says, to all those who thunderously applaud real-world Sith Lords and to the memory of all those who refuse to clap. So what did you mean by that?
Well, that's I was inspired by Hayeks' dedication in Road to Serfdom, right? Dedication to all socialists and people who are, right? That's Road to Serfdom, am I correct? Yeah, I think that's Road to Serfdom, right? That, to all the people who are clapping to real-world socialists from the past and from the future and so on. And then I really like this quote from Amidala. So basically, well, I have a mixture here, right? Because on the one hand, this is a dedication to the people who are applauding dictators and statists who are expanding government powers. And then, of course, to the memory of those who died during this process, right? So who are the victims of this expansion.
Right. And so, and of course, there's a reference there that when Palpatine takes over and becomes, I forget what, Supreme Chancellor or something, gets emergency powers, and everyone's applauding, and Amidala says, so this is how liberty dies, to thunderous applause, something like that. So that's what you're referencing.
Yeah. Great quote.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we jump through here? So you start out and you're going to explain Palpatine's political philosophy, and you say, no doubt we should place him with the Greek sophists. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, this Star Wars, Mickey Mouse story of Greek philosophy is simple. You have Socrates, who believed that you have the concept of absolute moral good and evil, and then the big followers of him. And then against it, you have sophists who believed, you cannot really say what is good, you cannot really say what is just. Then you have two Greek sophists arguing that, what is just power, and either it doesn't exist, or in reality, you have two. You can actually reject Socrates or this moral absolutism in two ways. You can either say, okay, the good doesn't exist at all, or you can just say, well, in reality, power is always about control, and might is just. as the simplification says. And when you look into Palpatine's actions, you will see that he's actually following Greek sophists on many occasions and saying that, absolute good, the concept of absolute good doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and a classic example of that. Now, to avoid copyright infringement, we won't do a clip here, folks. I'll just reproduce it. So there's a scene in the first episode where Palpatine, talking to the people from the Trade Federation, says, "This turn of events is unfortunate. We must accelerate our plans. Begin landing your troops on the planet's surface." And then the other guy says, "But my lord, is that legal?" And he says, "I will make it legal." Okay, so again, you can't see, but it's just me talking. So what's going on there, and why did you pick that particular thing where he's saying, "I will make it legal"? And again, the way he can do that, folks, is because he's the Sith Lord, like in real life, but behind the scenes, he's also the senator who's serving in the Galactic Senate, and people don't know originally that it's the same guy, and you, the viewer, only start to learn that over the course of the prequels.
Or if you've seen the previous trilogy, right? Well, I would say when if you have an approach like Socrates did to reality, you're thinking about the rules of the game and laws that you have as some forms of conventions reflecting something more fundamental. So when you're thinking about a particular action, that this action is perhaps illegal or that you are infringing something, well, you're not only just infringing it without reflection. I mean, you're thinking, okay, that's illegal, but how can I justify that? Right? How do you justify it? So I wouldn't say that if you're a moral absolutist, you always have to obey the law. I mean, that's incorrect, because perfect example is Antigone in Greek drama. She was defying. She was against the law, but at the same time defending something more fundamental, like natural law. So it's not that every type of illegal action is necessarily wrong. It's just that when you want to reject some form of rule of the game, you need form of rational philosophical reflection. Right? Is it justified? Like what type of values we believe that are important for our social life, and so on. And Palpatine is never doing this. Like, he always treats law as a simple tool, like a hammer. Mm-hmm. Like, we have the game just to play with them. Like, and might is right. So I just want to use my force, like literally my force, to just impose my will onto society.
Right. Okay. And then another classic one is later when he says, "I am the Senate," and it's treason then. Right. So again, where he's saying that, he's identifying himself with the Senate, and then any attack on him is hence treason, that anyone opposing his takeover, namely the Jedi in this case, he's construing it as, oh, that's an attack on the Republic. And then that's why we can, what is it, Order 66? That's why we can invoke that to go ahead and tell the the budding stormtroopers, go ahead and assassinate all the Jedi. And that's really an interesting thing, because, and I'd like your thoughts on that how did that happen? Because, presumably these guys, grew up thinking, oh, I'm defending the Republic. In other words, it's not that Palpatine went to each of them and said, hey, you know what we're doing? We're all going to turn evil and we're going to be the bad guys, and I want you to go kill the heroes. And they say, oh, okay, yeah, let me go shoot the heroes in the back. That's not, they are being ordered to defend the Republic against these traitors.
They are only following orders.
Mm-hmm.
And Palpatine is only giving the orders. Yeah.
But it's crucial.
Yeah.
From their perspective, the orders make sense. That, oh no, I mean, I'm supposed to defend the Republic as a armed person, as a troop, and I'm being told that these guys are committing treason. So of course I would need to kill them because they're traitors.
And this is what I like about George Lucas also, because at one point in one of the interviews, he says that the Empire is not an anti-Republic. The Empire is the Republic. Like, It's not like you have a suddenly monster taking over. It's just a natural consequence of progressive, bureaucratic, democratic republic, which is completely inefficient. Like, it's a natural end result, right? It's not something, it's not a monster. That it's not a something Deus ex machina. It's not outside. Like, it's natural consequences. This is what Lucas had in mind, even though prequels were not like they have many deficiencies, but this is really smart. The way, like the sketch is really smart. He wants to show, he wants us to see a form of political drama showing how this institution that we call republic almost naturally evolves into the empire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that, because it's, on the one hand, I understand people who mock the prequels as being terrible, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, what they did, like the script and what they do is amazing, to show this step-by-step transformation, the obvious stuff of how does the cute little Anakin Skywalker turn into Darth Vader, so they show that. But then I think more importantly, in terms of like politics and what's the broader lesson that I thought Lucas was trying to show us, is to show how you've got some manipulative characters behind the scenes and how they can rally people and stir up, war fever and transform a peaceful republic that was democratic. Obviously they like democracy and so on, and turn it into a galactic tyrannical empire. And it was kind of plausible along the way, and how he did it. Like, for example, you got another thing in here where you got a quote where Palpatine says, "I will not let this republic be split in two." And so you got the whole separatist thing, and of course behind the scenes when you realize that Palpatine is fueling the he's giving orders to both camps, so he's doing that on purpose. So I like that, and also to me that opening sequence of Episode 1. I think I went and saw Episode 1 in the theater like 6 times when it came out, just for that opening sequence. I love Liam Neeson. I like Ewan McGregor.
I saw it 10 times.
Okay, good. Yeah, so you and I together probably fueled 13% of the ticket sales for that thing. But, and then, the rest of it was downhill from there. But I mean, that opening thing was amazing. So I think people kind of sort of take that for granted that, and they knew what they had to go with it. But so I'm wondering, first of all, like, did you think they were good movies, or like, are you saying they did a lot and the movies though per se weren't great?
Yeah, I mean, as movie, like I would say that old classical trilogy is the best one. I mean, nothing can really compete with this, especially Part 5 and Part 6. That is The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I mean, they are just brilliant as a storytelling thing. But I mean, they are great because movies are about storytelling. Right. That's why they are the best. But as a story, as a political story, as a description of something serious about social issues and political issues, the prequels are the best. I mean, it's hard to compete with them. But, it's like comparing 2 different lectures, right? So you're comparing, for example, I don't know, boring Ludwig von Mises, who is not really entertaining and teaching you about all those little details that are not so fun. And then at the other spectrum, you have, I don't know, Frédéric Bastiat, right? Presenting you some economic harmonies. Then probably Bastiat was way more fun. I mean, because you have more storytelling, you have candle makers, etc., etc. But at the same time, you would say still Mises is more boring, but way deeper. So I have the same perception of older trilogy versus the prequels. It's just old trilogy is more fun, more entertaining, definitely better dialogue. You are much less bored at times. Also better acting, despite the limitations. But the prequels are still winning way off with the political story in there and philosophical story. Okay, so I totally agree with that, right? That there wouldn't be prequels if there weren't for the original trilogy, and if it had been vice versa, they might not have bothered to make the the people wouldn't have said, I need another 3 of these, if they had just started with the first 3, like episodes 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let me ask you, so about Return of this quote about, I will not let this republic be split in 2. So to me, it seemed like the connection with Lincoln and, the Union armies and blah, blah. And yet I have seen, so I was writing, when I was doing my movie reviews at LRC, I remember some people I was saying this is obvious. And also there were libertarian types who were mad when episode, I guess it was 2 came out, saying, oh, Lucas is trying to show that the separatists are bad. And I was like, no, that's not what you know what I mean? Like, I was like, no, that's clearly not what he's doing. He's showing how they're being used and Palpatine's funding him to justify, how the Republic's going to turn into the Empire. But
somebody said that they thought I was reading into that when they heard Lucas, like Lucas was saying he was inspired by the Vietnam War, and they never saw Lucas directly comparing this stuff to the U.S. Civil War. Have you ever seen that, or do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, well, to defend this view a little bit against what you said, initially, and that would make prequels way, way, way better. Initially, the idea was that Amidala is secretly joining the separatists.
Mm-hmm.
That would be brilliant, right? She's supposed to secretly join the separatists. They even had the concept. You remember that silly discussion on the balcony? Oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, no, it's because I'm so in love with you. No, it's because I'm so in love with you. Also,
Right.
The love made you blind. You remember this, right?
Yep. I tried to forget, but yeah.
Yeah, but in the script, when Anakin leaves, the guy from the separatist movement appears on the balcony, like after the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to indicate that Amidala already realized that he's a bad guy. I mean, that Anakin is a bad guy, and we have to get rid of him. And she would even conspire to kill him. But that would be apparently, that would make the reality too complex, too similar to Game of Thrones, and they dropped it. So I would say, yeah, they wanted to simplify the separatist thing and just say that, separatists are just, a bunch of silly people. They don't understand that we need the republic. And this is the only dictatorial, totalitarian element in the whole story about which Lucas is not really clear. Because about everything else, about all the expansions of power, he's quite clear what is wrong and what is right. But in case of the existence of the Galactic Republic, like he sort of like intuitively likes the idea. He's not questioning it, right? That's why that's why I have Hobbesian monster on the cover, is that he doesn't really like many artists. Like, how do you recognize the great art? Well, you recognize it by the fact that the artist does not fully understand what he or she did in this work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this perfectly applies to Star Wars. I think Lucas did not realize that he actually unintentionally criticized the idea of centralized government, like the government in the whole universe. I mean, this is so ridiculous. We cannot even have the world government. We are so different, fortunately, on our planet to make the world government. But then he envisions the government in galactic space. And he thinks that we should have one Hobbesian monster directing our social-political life through this bureaucratic management and so on and so on. So I think he doesn't take the step forward to realize that this is unnecessary. And actually, Republic has to fall, but not in order to be taken over by the Empire. You just have to just dissolve it and get rid of the monopolistic power.
All right,
and this he did not want to show, because if he did show this, he would have to show that separatists are maybe not fully right, but are leaning towards the proper thing. And then he could be like, I don't understand American circumstances. Like, I don't know what's going on in your country. But probably if he did that, they would say he's pro-slavery or something, right?
Right. Okay, so let me just, so you're saying, even though Lucas clearly is showing how Palpatine was using the separatists and fueling them and actually giving them orders in order to provoke this conflict would then justify the creation of the clone army and blah, blah, blah. And that the Empire could not have been created had it not been for the Clone Wars and the existence of the separatists. Like, society needed that scary enemy. But if I'm understanding, you're saying you think Lucas was okay with the idea of saying, yeah, the separatists really are not good, that you shouldn't want to break away from the Galactic Republic. The Republic is good so long as it's democratic and every planet has its voice in the Galactic Senate and there's rules and a constitution, that it was just hijacked by this evil Sith Lord. And if only we could have kept the right people as chancellor, then we would have been okay.
I mean, otherwise, why simplify it so much and make Dooku and Palpatine directly responsible for the separatist movement? I mean, why do it? I know Palpatine has to be behind all this, right? He has to be the ultimate puppet master of everything, as we know from horrible Episode 9. But it's not necessary, right? If you wanted to show separatists in a slightly better light, or at least give them a deeper meaning, like root them in something, like you had the Gungans in the first episode, right?
Right.
The Gungans were typical separatists. They wanted to separate not only from the Galactic Republic, they also wanted to separate from what's their name? Amidala's kingdom.
Naboo?
Naboo, right. They wanted to just, live separately on the other part of Naboo, away from this modernized civilization run by monarchy, right?
Right.
So, why not make it this way? Show separatists, or like Wookiees, right? Interested in going about their own business, not joining this huge, absurd, bureaucratic management, right? But he didn't choose this way, and he preferred to, make them puppets of Dooku and Palpatine, ultimately bad guys, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, so let me just repeat the one thing I was asking. Had you ever seen people compare it to because to me, it looked so obvious that he was putting words in Palpatine's mouth that sounded like Lincoln. And so, having read like the work of Tom DiLorenzo and stuff, I know how, even though Lincoln is revered in U.S. circles, on paper, it's like, gee, he kind of did some bad stuff and, transformed the nature of the U.S. federal government, from that point forward. And so I was wondering if you have ever seen, like, did anyone ever ask Lucas about that? Or have you seen, and you're looking at the secondary literature, does anyone else make this comparison?
No, not really. I didn't encounter that. But let me just say, I expected, this is also some flaw in how Anakin is transformed into Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
But I was expecting, but that would require, since again, American society is specific. But it would be really great if Lucas decided that Palpatine will be the ultimate not the chancellor, but the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Becomes the emperor, and part of the reason is that the old republic did not manage to abolish slavery, right?
Right.
And then Prince Anakin, you see, this is why you're right, because those lazy bureaucrats did not abolish slavery. We will do this by building an empire, and you will free all the people from slavery by subjecting all those separatist movements and all those independent political places under our rule, so we can introduce rule of law, republic credits, and get rid of slavery once and for all. But he didn't want to do this because then, again, they would say that he's making fun of Lincoln, right?
Right. Huh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. So I guess in the Star Wars universe, to be in the Republic, like slavery is presumably illegal in the Republic, and it's just on Tatooine, that's outside the jurisdiction of the Republic. That's why your Republic credits are no good here. I only take money, real money. Yeah. Okay. And of course, and he could have said to him too, like, remember, even Qui-Gon told you, I didn't come here to free slaves. So those Jedi, they're noble and stuff, but they just sit there and are content to let your mom just sit there, even though they had the power. Of course, Qui-Gon clearly could have freed his mother if he wanted to, and he chose not to. Absolutely ridiculous. And he's cheating at the game of dice, right? I mean, if you're cheating at the game of dice, just steal slaves. Come on. I mean, just... So you're talking about when what's-his-face throws the dice and Qui-Gon like moves his hand to use the Force to... Yeah.
I mean, if you're cheating at this game, just free the mother. Just don't ask this funny guy. Just free her and we're done, right?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go... You had a great point here. The section is called Creation of the New Secret Service. And you're talking about, secret services are beyond direct legal control. And then you say, here's the quote, Order 66 again. Out of nowhere, we learn about the loyal army of soldiers receiving very secret instructions directly from the Chancellor himself to kill off every single enemy of the Republic, every Jedi. So just for the benefit of people who either didn't see it or so, and this is one of the things I wanted to see in the prequels is because we know from the original trilogy that there was a time when there were a bunch of Jedi, not just Yoda and Ben, and then training Luke. And then we know somehow Vader and the Emperor were involved in killing them all off. And so here's actually how it happened. And as you're saying, Matt, it was just the Chancellor, when he's always treason, and all of a sudden he just gives this order. So like they had all been briefed. In other words, the people that we would later on call stormtroopers, they already knew, okay, that when I give the order, you got to go assassinate all the Jedi. And yet it's not that presumably was debated in the annals of the Senate and that all the senators knew about, this plan that we have in place to murder all the Jedi. So do you want to elaborate on that?
No, I mean, it's nicely done. And another thing also that you will see that most dictators, they need to have their own secret service to impose their rule, usually. Like they need to have their loyal soldiers that they secretly give special priorities and special powers, to just ignore parts of the law so that they can expand and they can be loyal and they can get rid of all those political leaders that are against you. And this is the same thing that happened in Third Reich. I mean, before Third Reich, right? I mean, when Hitler went to power, this is also what happened. They made sure they assassinated the people who will be against them during the voting also, right?
And you go on to say a typical prime minister under typical democratic procedures cannot really lead a perfect conspiracy. It is just too difficult to pull off since there are formal relations and rules that make it visible to some. So again, the point being, when Palpatine actually takes out the Jedi, we talked earlier about how I was saying he had to cast it as treason because otherwise, the soldiers might have, if he just said, hey, these Jedi that are up, the upholders of peace and the rule of law in the galaxy and justice, go shoot them in the back. They might say, well, wait a minute, why would I do that? But if it's it's treasonous, they're traitors against the Republic. That's, to motivate the simple-minded stormtroopers. But your point is this was a secret plan. This wasn't some official thing that was debated openly because clearly it wouldn't have passed. Like if it had been out in the open, people would have criticized it. It reminds me too of, I don't know if you thought of this parallel, but George Orwell's Animal Farm.
Sure.
Remember how, what's the pig's name? Napoleon, the bad pig early on, like there's the young puppies and they take them and they disappear. And then later in the story, they bring in these like vicious dogs, and that's how the ruling clique of pigs actually enforces their rule, is because they've separately raised these attack dogs to be loyal to them.
Oh, I didn't remember this. Yeah.
And so it's a great point because you kind of forget as a reader, you kind of forget about the little puppies that they took away, and then they bring them back, and so that's partly how the bad pigs get their rule, is because they got these dogs that are loyal to them that they've separately raised.
Hey, this story is even smarter than I thought. I forgot about this.
So there's a lot in there. Yeah, you should read it again. I read it again. My son had to read it for school
again because I read it in elementary school, and then I just didn't want to read it anymore.
I seriously, if you go, and for folks listening at home, if you've read Animal Farm like as a kid or something because your teacher made, go read it again. I think you'd be like, wow, there's a lot of wisdom packed into there. Okay, let's see here. Let me just jump ahead. Okay. And by the way, folks, there's all kinds of, like, you make all sorts of movie references, not just, but like references to The Godfather and things. So it's a very clever book, folks. And I'm telling you, if you like the content here, I encourage you to go get, again, bobmurphyshow.com/125 to get this thing, because it's very well written and there's all sorts of little allusions. But so you say here, let me read a little bit and then I'll let you go ahead.
Sure.
Only now at the end do you understand. Anakin was actually filling a specific role in the first 3 episodes. You're welcome. Palpatine needed a whining, weak boy who was not very smart and didn't have a great philosophical understanding of the Force. The boy needed to possess great physical skills and a ruthless character. He needed to lack strong morals but be keen to act on emotion, just as the dark side recommends. He also had to be easily manipulated. Such a vulnerable man requires only praise and a pat on the back to convince him to be obedient. Okay, and then where I love where you're going with this is to say, That partly explains the shallowness of the opera scene in episode 3. And I'm skipping a little bit. Some of you, so here, Matt, you're talking to your readers. Some of you are inclined to say to the director, I know it was you, George, you broke my heart. But sorry, it was not him. It was Palpatine who perfectly knew what he wanted to achieve. Okay, and so here you're saying like some of the scenes that were just cringy when people are watching, like the dialogue seems so stilted and oh my God, this is stupid. And your point was, well, no, if there had been clever banter and repartee between, and great philosophical disputes between Palpatine and Anakin, Palpatine couldn't have turned such a person into Darth Vader.
Yeah. And he might have, he could have been defeated by him at some point, right? This is what happened to Darth Plagueis. Right? Darth Plagueis apparently was a very, very smart person, but...
Remind people who that is, in case they haven't seen this.
Well, the teacher of Palpatine, right? Of Darth Sidious, right? He was the teacher, and he was assassinated by Palpatine, right? So Palpatine was way smarter and stronger. Part of the plan how to take over the Republic was designed by Darth Plagueis, apparently, something we learn outside of the movies. But in any case, that was the point. And the Scythian rule, the Palpatine's rule, is that he needs a soldier that will follow the orders. And that's why you need an intellectually weak follower. Right? This is part of because that's from the chapter, right, about the worst going on top. This is something that Hayek noticed in Road to Serfdom.
Right.
Like you need the weakest people, intellectually weak people, going on top, so they follow orders. Like Yezhov was just getting instructions from Stalin who to kill and how to kill, and as efficiently and as fast as possible. And he was not thinking about the nuances of bourgeoisie or nuances of the Bolshevik revolution and so on. You just have to follow orders, because if you do have a philosophical reflection, you are a potential threat to the ultimate monopoly, right? That's why in all cases of full dictatorship, whether you go to China or Russia or Cambodia, you will always see leaders killing other leaders as fast as possible. Why do you think Stalin wanted to, trace all the competition, all the potential intellectual competition? Because they could actually constrain his power a little bit. So the same could happen to Palpatine if Anakin was, for example, as smart as him or intellectually sophisticated and so on. But this is not what Palpatine wanted. Like, he didn't need a true, smart advisor, someone who can take over. He just needed someone to do the dirty job.
Right. Okay. And so your point is, besides that insight, that's what, in other words, you think it wasn't just, that kid, was his Hayden Christensen or something like that? I think the actor who plays the older Anakin. Yeah. By the way, I didn't realize that the actor who did the young Anakin, apparently he left acting. Like, he was teased and stuff in school and whatever. And people, because he was also in some other movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I forget where he's the kid.
Jingle All the Way.
What's that?
Jingle All the Way.
Yeah. But so when I realized who that was, I went and looked him up on Wikipedia, and apparently it's a sad story that he got teased and stuff. Like, people were making fun of him, and I thought he was okay as the little Anakin, but
Yeah, he was okay, and he turned out as a good grown-up. So that's the happy ending, right?
Yeah.
So
okay. So anyway, but back to what I was saying is that I think some of us, and I would have included myself until I read your thing there, that where Anakin is the moody teenager, and in many ways I'm better than Obi-Wan, and he's threatened and and he's just being pouty. Yeah, that came off as just it was just I didn't even want to watch those scenes. Get to a different scene, get Palpatine back on camera here. But it was, you're saying that he had to be like that. If it had been somebody who was more in depth and nuanced and philosophically sound, the transition wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, and we see this in the discussion on the grass, right? When they talk about democracy, that Anakin is saying, we need to have some form of, we need to act. We shouldn't have disputes. We shouldn't have discussions. So this whole discussion about democracy is a little bit silly too. Mm-hmm. But this is how it has to be. Anakin has to be very, very weak intellectually. Also, it perhaps slightly unintentionally show us that Jedi education system is flawed because they don't teach economics, they don't teach they don't teach politics. I mean, these things should be taught, but apparently they don't do this. They only teach them, all those tricks with lightsabers.
Right. I wonder if Yoda understands comparative advantage. Because he is wise, but he never talks about it, so you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there other? So I have just hit the things where I was looking at the book that I wanted to pull out. Is there any other things that you uncovered that you think, in other words, libertarian, anarcho-capitalist thinkers who also love the Star Wars? Is there anything that you noticed in there that was a revelation to you?
Yeah, what I really like and what is also touched upon in Last Jedi is the fact that is this Lord Acton's warning that all power is corruptive, right? And absolute power corrupts absolutely, but all power is corruptive. And it's also demonstrated in case of the Jedi in the first episode, right? And some of it is in the deleted scenes. One deleted scene is when Mace Windu is discussing with Yoda whether they should report to the Senate that their powers are weakened, but that they decide not to. So they already, try to dodge.
Hey, can you? So what? I think I've seen it. So what is it that they are acknowledging that they can tell there's a Sith Lord around, but they just they can't sense it, and they're concerned our abilities with the Force are weakened. Should we report? And then they say no, don't, because that might freak the Senate out. Well, let's not let them know our weakness.
There is some deleted scene like this. Maybe I'll try to find it so we can put the link if you want to. We can try to put the link of the video with the textbooks, and then you have Mace Windu arguing against fair trial and arresting Palpatine, which basically creates Darth Vader, because then if you just arrested him like it was supposed to happen, then Anakin would probably not join the Sith. Well, we don't know what would happen, but in any case, his responsibility was to actually capture him.
Okay, and so by the way, folks, so Mace Windu is the one that Samuel Jackson was playing, and he's is powerful, even perhaps a better fighter than Yoda. So he was the one that goes over to take Palpatine into custody once, what's his name? Anakin goes to them and says, hey, this guy's the Sith Lord. And he says, if what you tell us is true, then you will have earned my trust. He goes there. And then your point is that he doesn't go there to eventually arrest him. It's no, we just got to kill this guy because he's too powerful. And then
he's too dangerous to be kept alive.
Right. And so then Anakin, partly it's out of his, knowing, wait a minute, that's not how the Jedi are trained, but also because he knows, wait a minute, this guy told me he could keep Amidala from dying. And so I don't want him to get killed by Mace Windu. But your point being, Mace Windu died in the course of trying to go assassinate someone he thought was too dangerous to get a fair trial.
Yeah, and that's the same quote, right? Palpatine says the same thing in this episode about Dooku. He's too dangerous to be kept alive. Kill him, Anakin.
Right.
It's the very same thing. It's just repeated by Mace Windu.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and then you have this, well, what is going on in there, right? So they are drunk with power, the Jedi. They are drunk with power, and this is probably the best. Yeah, it is the best line in the newer trilogy, where Luke says, I want Jedi to end. But why? It's because they were corrupted by the power. Because they had the hubris, they thought that, that they are immune to the problems of power, because they actually allowed Darth Plagueis to arise and so on and so on. They actually trained Darth Vader because they were so blind in their own thinking. And this is because they believe that they are flawless. But, every kind of power is dangerous. And this also applies to the Jedi. This is what I like about the prequels, because Lucas clearly wanted to show this, that the Jedi lost their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also even the fact that the Palpatine, the people he trains are always ex-Jedi. That's something too. Right. Even Count Dooku, right, used to be a Jedi, and then so there is something there that, why is it that the most evil guy in the galaxy keeps recruiting from our own ranks? That's kind of that's something. What should we do? And go talk to human resources about that. Maybe we should do some more vetting when we hire people. Okay. Well, I guess we're getting close here on the time. Any closing thing? What would have been good is if Lucas showed how there was an unsustainable structure of production, and that's why the Republic had to fall. That really would have tied everything together.
Well, there was. They couldn't make up the second Death Star on time, right?
Right. Exactly. Okay, well, thank you, Matt, so much for sharing your thoughts and your time here. So again, folks, this is bobmurphyshow.com/125. I'll put links to all of the books that we've discussed and maybe some of these other fun things about Samuelson and Krugman and Flip Flop and Mace Windu. And
Thank you.
so thanks, Matt, and thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great fun.